And welcome back to the Gampel Effect. I'm Dan Katz, joined alongside by Jon Harner. What a difference a week makes. 7 days ago, we were here sitting talking about a lackluster win over Georgetown, a head coach calling out the home crowd, and a 91-84 loss to Creighton at Gampel, where the defense, in Dan Hurley's words, had been a joke. The standard was challenged. The edge was questioned and the Big East race tightened. Fast forward 1 week, UConn wins 3 straights. Villanova, St. John's, and Seton Hall. The same Villanova team that took us to overtime earlier in the month. The same St. John's team chasing us for the league title. The same Seton Hall team that has been a thorn in our side the past few seasons. Now, UConn's a half game ahead of St. John's in the Big East. There's 1 game left at Marquette. From slippage to separation, from defensive questions to defensive response. This week wasn't about noise. It was about standard. Let's break it down. And let's start with the games that changed everything, Villanova and St. John's. And that Villanova game, according to Dan Hurley, was a playoff game coming off the Creighton loss, the defense under fire, the bench question, a half-game chase in the standings behind St. John's, and the first half, lackluster, much like the past month, not dominant. The game started the same for Solo Ball, who was torched for 8 early points by Tyler Perkins of the Villanova Wildcats. UConn Nation had to be wondering if Hurley was going to give Solo another quick hook. Instead, he kept him on the floor. Although there were defensive miscues and 5 unforced turnovers by Silas Demery Jr., UConn led 34-32 at the break. Villanova was composed, physical, and this felt like a swing game possibly in the Big East race. Then the second half happened. UConn came out with defensive intensity we had not seen since the 2024 championship team, and a second half run, 13-2, to take a 47-34 lead. The ball pressure tightened, the rotation sharpened, reboundings cleaned up, and the Wildcats could not keep up with the scoring runs. Ultimately, Villanova would pull to 49-41 with 12 minutes to play, but UConn ramped up the defense, and the bench played a major role. Jalen Stewart 3 gave UConn a 61-44 lead with 8 minutes to play. UConn's bench came to play with Ryba, 8 points, 5 rebounds. Stewart, 2 threes, 6 points, 3 rebounds. Jaden Ross, 4 points, 2 rebounds, but great shutdown D. Alex Caravan led all scorers for UConn with 12. The final was 73-63. UConn usually leaned heavily on their starting 5 all season, but the bench really showed up. And John, what are your thoughts?
Well, initial thoughts were Solo Ball didn't look great defensively once again. And Mr. Perkins playing in Pennsylvania probably thought he was Wilt Chamberlain. He would potentially go for 100 points in a game. He was looking like he could score at will. UConn came out in the second half, made adjustments. I really don't think they really made any adjustments. They just started playing with a little more intensity on the defensive end, and offensively, they just ran their sets to perfection. And I thought it was a great sign from this UConn team that kind of been a little lackluster over the previous couple of games. But it was great to see them, and especially Ball rebound after that disastrous first 4 minutes.
And I think it's interesting, especially Dan Hurley's post-game remarks from the Creighton game saying that he had done a bad job with the bench over the Big East play. Mm-hmm. And it was really the bench that led UConn. The defensive intensity, Jaden Ross coming in as a perimeter defender, Malachi Smith forcing turnovers. This was reminiscent of what we saw in 24 in terms of really utilizing the defense to turn into offense. And, that 12-3 run really looked like the Huskies of 24 and boded well if you think about it. And listening to Danny post-game on the urgency, it was a playoff game for us on the bench. I've mismanaged them for the past 2 weeks. I get those guys on the court. They're a big reason why we had some of our best non-conference wins of the year. He took ownership. He didn't blame players. And Jalen Stewart, as we'll see over the next 2 games, been out with an injury the past couple of games. But he said he's a heck of a player, and he's done a bad job connecting with players, letting him know that I have confidence in him. That's not something we've seen Danny do over the past couple of years. Maybe he has toned it down a little bit.
Yeah, he definitely has toned it down. Also, he never really had to do anything in the past couple of years. Everything's been fairly smooth running for the most part, and whatever buttons he did push, they worked out well. But this year, and last year was a different story. But this year he's kind of struggled finding that groove again once we hit the Big East play. And like we've said before, he went away from his bench, gave people quick hooks, and from a confidence level, that's not great for any player. But during those games, the game against Villanova, you saw Jalen Stewart step up, hit 2 big threes. Ryba probably played one of his best games in those last 10 or 15 games. And if we could get the big man to come off the bench and give you 10 points and 5 rebounds, I think we're sitting in a great position.
No, and when you look at the discrepancy, Creighton, 91 points.
Yeah.
Villanova, 63.
Right.
There weren't blown assignments in the second half. It wasn't a foul parade. There wasn't defensive panic. UConn was making shots, but that wasn't the only reason they won. It was really about the defense and the guarding and the effort. That was something that we hadn't seen in a while, and it kept them within striking distance of St. John's, who at the time sat at 15-1 in conference, while UConn moved to 15-2. And then Wednesday in Hartford at People's Bank, this was the one that really mattered. We were fortunate enough to be there. Villanova was about the response. St. John's was about control. Let's go there as we were in the building in Hartford. St. John's was about domination. Earlier this season at MSG, St. John's snapped UConn's 18-game winning streak. UConn had shot 55% from the field, 47% from 3, and still lost. Why? St. John's attempted 31 free throws, 12 by UConn. They won the rebounding battle. They forced 15 turnovers, and MSG felt like a tidal wave. Fast forward to Hartford, UConn, in dominating fashion, blew out the Johnnies, and one of the most dominant performances I could remember by UConn in a long time, 72-40. It wasn't revenge, it was control. St. John's shot a putrid 19.6% from the field. Let that sit with you. They were 2 of 28 in the second half. They didn't make a field goal over the final 17 minutes and 28 seconds. UConn became the first team in 12 years to hold a top 15 opponent under 20% shooting. That wasn't just better, it was suffocating. UConn had bursts of 9-0, 18-0. But Big Hoss really came to play. How about Terrace Reed? 20 points, 11 rebounds, 6 block shots. Really, I think wanted to send a message to probably Big East Player of the Year, Zuby Ejiofor.
Oh, absolutely. I think Danny was trying to send a message to St. John's, Rick Pitino, the fan base of St. John's, and Terrence Reed did the same thing. He was a beast down low. I haven't seen him play like this in a UConn uniform ever. I wish we had this all year long, but if we get this for the rest of the season, I mean, he's going to be a handful down below, in the block for anybody to defend.
And, it was one of those nights where everything, as Danny said, just went great for us. And everything went wrong for them. When they're not making baskets, they're not able to press. Darling and Mitchell, 2 key contributors to the game at MSG, both finished with 0 points. Yeah. And Darling really didn't have an imprint on the game. Ian Jackson, one of their big NIL transfers from University of North Carolina, also didn't have his imprints on the game. It was really the Silas Demery, Terrace Reed shot making in just swarming and hounding defense, which was great to see. And the crowd atmosphere. Now, I've always been one who said, I really prefer big time games at Gampel Pavilion.
Yeah.
But I think Danny's little tirade and diatribe about the home crowd really resonated. You saw it in the Creighton game, even though they lost, but Hartford was alive and well. And it really is impressive when you get a 17,000 seat arena pumping and rocking like Hartford was on Wednesday night.
Yeah, it was a huge advantage for UConn, definitely. Over the course of the years of watching UConn, Hartford can be dead at times, even when you do have big time matchups. But being there at the game, man, it felt like we were at an MSG. It was felt the fans were into it. They were not just cheering, when we needed to. They were engaged in the whole game at all times, and I think that gave energy to the players and coaches and everybody involved, and propelled us to victory.
And it's interesting because, I like comparing this team to a death by 1,000 cuts. They're not really known for those knockout blows of the 24 team or even the 23 team. It's really, playing defense, but our shot making at times. But it flipped that night. The energy flipped, the result flipped, the 9-point loss to 32-point win. With that victory, UConn moved a half game ahead of St. John's in the Big East standings, tied in the loss column. We'll get more into this later in the show, but tiebreakers, it's looking like right now coming down with the Big East. UConn had control of at least a shared regular season title back in their hands. A potential third matchup looming at MSG against St. John's, probably in the Big East championship game, but the psychological edge as much as a tactical one. And now St. John's has felt both versions. The MSG surge, the Gampel suffocation. Villanova game showed that UConn could adjust. St. John's proved they could dominate. From defensive questions to a 40-point lockdown or a 30-point lockdown. It's not drift, it's correction. And we look ahead to Marquette in the championship math. But before that was senior day for one Alex Karaban against Seton Hall, where we reminded everyone what this era has been about. And it's really Karaban's moment and his legacy secured, even though it was never in doubt.
Right.
In an emotional final game at Gampel Pavilion, after becoming the first active player placed in the Huskies' Ring of Honor, Alex Karaban delivered again in ways he really hasn't for much of the season. UConn, it was a rock fight. They ended up prevailing 71-67, but it was anything but easy. Seton Hall, one of the top defensive teams in the country, came in desperate. This game, they're clearly on the wrong side of the bubble, needing a marquee victory, Seton Hall, that is. They played like a team fighting for their NCAA tournament life. They shot 50% from the floor in the first half. They led UConn 33-32 at the break. There were 8 forced turnovers. But then midway through the second half, with Seton Hall up 8, 54-46, 9 minutes left, Gampel got tight. But this is where the legacy of Alex Karaban took over. He hit a 3, then another. And after a Mullins 3, the deficit was erased. AK played all 40 minutes, the game high 23 points, 8 of 11 shooting. He passed Christian Vitel, one of the most underrated UConn Huskies of all time. I'm 10th on the all-time scoring list, although he got a lot of those buckets against the Tulsas and the East Carolinas of the world. But Alex, with 20 seconds left, hit 2 clutch free throws, take a 3-point lead, and the dagger finding solo ball to seal it at the line. UConn free throws have been an issue all year, shot 20 of 29 from the stripe. It nearly cost them, but didn't. And whatever it took to win, Alex said at the end of the game, shots were falling. I got rewarded for my 4 years. And, Where do you think Alex falls? It was a tight game. It was a game I felt you had the hangover effect from the St. John's blowout.
Absolutely.
But Alex is, we're not going to see many guys like this in college basketball with the new NIL landscape and guys leaving early for the pros, especially with some of the Burger Boys we're getting, with the Braylon Mullins and the Liam McNeelys and the Stefan Castles. And even, we've had Newton and Silas Demery as 2-year guys. The Cam Spencers of the 1 years, Terrace Reed of 2 years. It's going to be rare to see a player play all 4 years in a Husky uniform. I know we had Samson Johnson last year,
Yeah.
but he didn't impact UConn the way that Alex Caravan has.
Oh no, absolutely not. And it's really tough to like kind of. I was trying to think about it like in a way of like where Alex ranks all time as an all time great, but like his skill set is so different than the majority of people that played here at UConn. He wasn't a superstar, but I'm not classifying him as like a role player. He whatever you needed him to do, he could do. He's like a handyman. He just go out there. You want me to play defense for 40 minutes and not score? All right, I'll do that. Oh, you need me to score 25 tonight? All right, I'll do that too. So he's been very special. The only thing that for me personally, last year I would love to see him step up and be the leader, the go-to guy. Now I know that I really do believe that concussion really messed with him all season long. So I would wish he didn't get injured, and I think he would have filled that role, and his level would have been even higher and even greater here at UConn. But with that said, I mean, like he's a top 10 player in my book here at UConn with everything he's done for the program, the 2 national championships, and just the type of player and person he is to represent, UConn.
And I completely agree with you. It's hard, a guy 13 points, 8 rebounds a game to say like upper pantheon.
Right.
But to your point, he's really been whatever UConn has needed him to be. His freshman year, end of the half 3-pointers in NCAA tournament games. He really was that fourth, fifth, even fifth option offensively as a freshman. His sophomore year, he really started to take another step over. His relationship with Danny is really unique and kind of one of a kind. I think Danny's gotten the best out of him. Last year was difficult, but I really can't put it all on him. I think McNeely getting injured.
Oh, there's so many things that went wrong last year. You can't blame Alex.
Mahaney,
Yeah.
even with all his great efforts, just wasn't the answer at point guard. And I think UConn gave Florida, a team who went on to run Ripshaw and run the national championship, their biggest scare. The UConn had them on the ropes, and that wasn't a prototypical Danny Hurley UConn team. And I think Alex's leadership played a big role even there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was a leader on the court. He's a second coach, a second head coach out there. He definitely takes Danny's words and translates them to the team and while they're out there and tries to communicate with the players maybe in a slightly different way than Danny would to unite everybody.
And one of the things that I think is undervalued about Alex is how unselfish he is. He could demand the ball and say, all right, I'm going to average 19 to 21 points a game.
Right.
But he does all the intangibles. He truly is the Swiss Army knife for this team. And he has just such a major and indelible impact on winning. The fact that he's 31-1 all time in Hartford. That one loss actually did happen to St. John's in 23. 60-6 lifetime at home. Over 120 wins and counting. It's incredible what he's done. And I think he's one of those people that when we look back in 10 years, he'll be more appreciated. He is appreciated getting his name in the Ring of Honor as an active player, the only one ever in UConn history to do that. I do believe he may get his number retired. I don't think anytime soon.
No.
But if they win a third national championship in 4 years,
I mean, you have to at that point.
yeah.
Especially if he does something like 18-9, couple, 4 assists, a couple blocks in the average during the tournament run, and we put together another, win by 10 every game or some nonsense like that. Yeah, you got to put him up there at that point. There'll be an outcry from the Husky fans if he's not up there, I feel like.
Well, I think Danny's going to ensure that he gets up there.
Oh, absolutely.
But, going back to the game, it wasn't their best performance, but they've done something that a lot of teams struggle with. They win the close games. They're 27-3 on the season. Mm-hmm. They're 17-2 in Big East play. They're a half game ahead of St. John's. They demonstrated how determined and tough, and they showed the heart of a championship level team. Closing out the Seton Hall game, solo ball, 14 points. Braylon Mullins, 11 points. Terrace Reed, his 8th double-double of the season, 10 and 11. More than likely, Big East Player of the Week for what he did in St. John's in the game against Seton Hall. Silas Demery, 9 assists, even though he really didn't contribute scoring the basketball. Jaden Ross sparked some of the first half offense. And it's really impressive. Alex, he's probably, I don't think he's as talented as Ray Allen and Emeka Okafor and Kemba Walker and Shabazz Napier, but he's a pillar of this UConn team, and particularly over this run over the past 4 years.
Yeah, his handprint was involved in everything over these last 4 years. Obviously, we don't win 2 championships if he's not on this team. I think we can all say that. Just like you said, 10 years from now, that's when people are going to realize how good of a player Alex actually was and is. And then hopefully he can continue that in the NBA next year. We'll see what happens with that.
I think he's going to be a better NBA player than a lot of people think. I think, is he a starter? No.
Yeah.
But can he carve out a Duncan Robinson type role?
Oh, yeah.
I think absolutely. He's so cerebral. He probably knows the sets better than Danny does at this point in terms of offensively. Alex wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the flashiest, but he is foundational. And he didn't just win. He stabilized. He bridged championship teams. He modeled professionalism. And solo ball after the game, he said, you can almost guarantee AK is going to make a momentum play. I respect this guy to the end. It's pure reverence. It's legacy. As we're looking from last week, nearly the Georgetown slip, losing to Creighton to now 27-3. Their half-game lead, senior day secured, legacy cemented, this team's identity, its resilience, and all in the embodiment of Alex Caravan. So where do these 3 straight wins bring us, including that one, mean for banners and brackets? Let's look at that Big East standing. So right now, UConn is 17-2 with 1 game remaining at Marquette. St. John's is 16-2 with games remaining against Georgetown and Seton Hall. Mm-hmm. St. John's is probably going to win the next 2 games.
You think they're going to beat Seton Hall and Newark?
I do. I do. I think Seton Hall blew their shot. I think they had us on the ropes. They always play tough, but I put it to you this way. If we didn't beat St. John's by 30, I may feel differently about the game.
Okay.
But I think they also want to win a Big East title too.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot on the line in that game, but I'm going to disagree. I'm going to go with Seton Hall. So we'll see what happens then.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. I just think they play two very similar styles, but of more relevance, whoever thought that Providence and Creighton were going to be the two teams this year that the 1 seed in the Big East tournament is going to come down to? If Providence wins out, or if Creighton loses another game, UConn will enter the Big East tournament as the 1 seed if they finish tied with St. John's. And the reason for that is it's not who lost to a worse team in conference, because UConn and St. John's will be 1-1. It's how you fare against the teams directly below you. So if we look currently, UConn and St. John's are both 2-0 against Villanova. UConn right now 2-0 against Seton Hall. St. John's 1-0. If they win that game, 2-0. DePaul right now would be the 5. Yes, DePaul at 8-10 would be the 5 seed in the Big East tournament right now. Both UConn and St. John's were 2-0 against them. But right now, this is where it's the disadvantage for UConn. Creighton, 8-11, 6 seed. UConn went 1-1 against them.
Okay.
St. John's was 2-0.
Yeah.
Providence, who's 7-11, a half game behind Creighton, and where it helps UConn, Providence went 2-0 against Creighton this year.
Okay.
So UConn, who went 2-0 against Providence, St. John's 1-1. So it really is going to come down. Can Kim English lead Providence to 2 more wins? Or is Doug McDermott going to win 1 more? And that's going to determine where we fall.
Oh, man, that's ridiculous. Do you know who Providence is playing?
I got to look that up quickly. I believe they're both winnable games, to be honest with you.
Okay.
They are playing on Wednesday. Both of them are playing. Creighton plays at Butler.
No, that's a tough one.
Yep. Marquette plays at Providence.
Okay.
And then on Saturday, to close out the regular season, Providence plays at Georgetown. And I want to say on Friday night, or actually, no, Creighton is done.
They're done, yeah.
Because they're already at 19 games. So they're not playing. So that Providence game on Saturday, depending on what happens, could be for all the marbles.
That's crazy how that works out. But I guess that is a pretty good way of determining who's the champion is, I guess. Oh, man. So what you're saying is let's go Seton Hall.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But looking at seeding, and as you mentioned last week, the Iowa States of the world, the Houstons of the world, Purdue, that they all had tough weeks.
Yep.
Now, this is where it's become interesting to me. So right now, UConn is projected to be the 4th number 1 seed. I think right now, Duke, Michigan, and Arizona, they could lose 2 games and still get 1 seeds.
I agree with you on that. Yeah. They're pretty much locks.
UConn, to me, based on their resume, should be locked in as the 4th number 1.
Right.
If they beat Marquette, and even if they lost in the quarters or semis, that puts them at 29-4 on the season, 28-4. Florida, yes, they have been surging. They are probably playing the best basketball in the country right now. They have the highest win streak out of any major conference team. And because of that, and because of their 22-6 mark and their quad one wins, they're getting a lot of talk about potentially being that fourth number one seed. And I don't get it. I don't think the SEC is as good as it was last year. Now, Florida has beaten University of Miami, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Alabama, Kentucky, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. Where's the top 10 win of that?
Right. There's not.
There's not. They've beaten a lot of good teams.
Yeah.
And I can't argue that the SEC isn't miles ahead of the Big East this year.
No, I agree.
From top to bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
But UConn is beating Illinois. They were talked about as a 2 seed, 1 seed. BYU with Richie Saunders, who was also a top 4 seed. That Florida team, that has to count for something, you would think.
Right.
Oh, and at Kansas, at Fog Allen Fieldhouse, where no one wins. And then St. John's and Villanova twice. I don't even understand how this conversation.
Well, I don't get it either. I mean, if you look at that, then you look at the ranked wins. I think we're 6-2 against the AP. They're 6-3. And their 3 losses were against, us, Arizona, and I forget who the other one was, but Duke, yes.
They lost to Duke by a point when Duke also was not playing their best.
No, Duke didn't look great. I had questions about them at that time. So even though they're winning these games on the 9-game winning streak, half those wins were against like LSU, South Carolina, Mississippi State, the bottom of the SEC. So it's like, what team are you actually getting? Now they do have just blew out Arkansas, and they did beat, I think, Alabama on the road pretty
handily.
Yeah. So they are trending in the right direction, but to leapfrog a team that pretty much compares, with all the metrics or whatever you want to say, just based on that alone, 27-3 compared to, I don't know how many wins they have, but they have 6 losses. That should mean something. Right. They should even be questioned for a 1 seed right now. At all, in my mind, they should be a 2 seed.
They lost to TCU. Yes. They lost to Texas Christian.
Yep.
I mean, and again, I'm not saying that they're not playing the best basketball. They are. I can't argue with that. And they may be the hottest team. But the regular season has to mean something.
Absolutely. They're just getting a little up because they feel like the SEC is, one of the top 2-3 conferences in the league. And I mean, right now, I think they have 10 or 11 teams in, and the 10th team in is an Auburn team that's 15-14, and that's like 6-10 in conference. Like, how is that team supposed to be a NCAA tournament team? In my opinion, they were 1-7 in their last 8 games. But you're saying the strength of the SEC is that much that they should get in, and that boosts up Florida? Like, I don't get that. That, to me, that makes no sense.
And last year I could live with it. Last year, Auburn was the dominant number 1 team in the country all year. Florida really turned it on, but also played well. The top of the SEC last year was miles better than what they. I mean, when you're telling me that Arkansas is one of the 4 best teams in the, like, are you kidding me?
All the SEC teams have been so inconsistent this year that you don't know what you're going to get. The only team that I would fear facing right now would be Florida, just based on what they've been doing to teams and how they're playing. They're beatable, but they're playing the best ball by far.
Now, I could almost guarantee you, if we win out and Florida wins out, Florida is going to be the 2 seed in our region.
Oh yeah. It's bound to happen. They're going to get that top 2 seed, which is going to match up with us.
But I'll say, I'd rather play 8-9. I'd rather play 4-5, because there's a big difference from 2 3s. And I'll say this: Florida will not make the Elite Eight.
Okay.
They are going to either go down in the round of 32 or the Sweet 16 because they are the defending national champions. And besides UConn and Florida of 07, 08, champions don't do well. And I don't like their guards. And I don't care how Lee's playing. And I don't care how Flan's playing in the SEC. Yes, they have the best front court in the country, but that's it. Now, if you're the committee, are you going to reward ceiling or resume balance? And before any of that matters, UConn's got Marquette. Marquette played them tough at Gampel Pavilion earlier in the season. Nigel Williams, name to remember, Husky fans. He's going to be a thorn in our sides unless Shaka Smart leaves. Nigel Williams is a phenomenal. It's probably the third best freshman player. Amazing point guard for the Golden Eagles. Disappointing season. It's always tough playing in Milwaukee. You know, this is their championship. What do you think UConn needs to do to avoid a Seton Hall-like performance?
Like you said, this is their championship game. So you got to expect them to come out with tons of ball pressure, I feel like. They're just going to pressure the guards and try to create some havoc. And if we handle that, I think there's nothing to worry about. I think that's really what it's just going to come down to is, not turning the ball over and being smart with the ball.
And I definitely agree with you. I think one of the things, even though Terrace only had 10 points in the Seton Hall game, they've made more of a conscientious effort to get him the ball on the block. And this is something we talk about all the time. They play much better when they get the ball in the paint and shoot threes than when they're relying on passing the ball around the perimeter and shooting those 3-pointers. And I think they're making an effort. I'd like to see more of that. With Parham, Gold now, I think he's coming off the bench for Marquette.
Yep.
He's never really impressed me much anyways. UConn has the advantage. UConn has the advantage for the most part when they go up against anyone down low, particularly with Terrace Reed. So I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see Solo's confidence. I'd like to see Silas get some of the scoring going.
Yeah. He's I don't want to say struggling of late, but he wasn't really looking for a shot against Seton Hall at all. So if he could do that, that'd be great to see him get back in the scoring column.
Well, and now we're going to find out if the response becomes a run. Ironically enough, when we spoke a couple weeks ago, I said 5-1 down the stretch, 28-3. We beat Marquette. We're right there. Didn't think we'd get it this way, but it's interesting. So here's what we know. 2 weeks ago, we were asking questions about the defense, about the edge, about the standard. Dan Hurley even called out the crowd, called out the effort, called out the slippage. Since then, 3 wins, Nova, St. John, Seton Hall. UConn's now a half game ahead in the Big East. 1 road test left. This is what championship programs do. They don't flinch. They respond. The margin is thin. The expectations are heavy. And the standard in stores, still the standard. Marquette is next. The Big East tournament follows. And then March. For Jon Harner, I'm Dan Katz. This is the Gampel Effect. Stores basketball, capital of the world. Talk to you soon.